everybody. My name is Matt, the founder of Q4Launch, and we are excited you guys are with us as we dive into our 5th webinar and our marketing bootcamp series today. 5 tips for revenue generating email marketing. This is a topic that we've talked a lot about at different webinars you may have attended in the past. You know, it's a topic that we're really passionate about at Q4Launch, but an opportunity to really look at how do we use email marketing well to generate revenue. And I think there's a lot of misconceptions around email marketing. We've spoke about some of those in the past, not going to dive into all those again today, but really focus our time together today on the tips to help you drive more revenue from your email marketing. We're going to look at a few different categories of email marketing and really make sure that you come away from today's bootcamp with some actionable steps you can take in your email marketing strategy. As I travel around and I talk and I teach at different conferences, I'll often ask the audience for a show of hands on who's doing which type of marketing medium as I move through different strategies that we're teaching at those conferences. And as I do that and I ask that question about email marketing, there are less hands that go up when it comes to email marketing than any other marketing medium. At the same time, when digital marketing is studied from a research perspective, email marketing consistently delivers the highest return on investment of all the digital marketing mediums that are out there. So to kind of start us off here, and it's not even one of my 5 tips, but if you get nothing else from today, if you spend less time doing other things with a lower ROI and spend more time doing email marketing, which is proven to have one of the highest ROIs of all digital marketing mediums, you'll have a more successful 2020 than you had 2019. So take that away if nothing else, but we're going to talk a lot more today about how to do revenue generating email marketing really well and what that looks like. So if this is your first time with us, welcome. We're glad that you guys are here as well. We know have a lot of first timers on our marketing bootcamp series. We hope you're enjoying this format as we're coming to you. If you've been a long-time listener, long-time subscriber, as they say on the radio, then this is a new format for you, and we hope you're enjoying that. We'd love to hear what you think about the format in the comments on the video or in the chat panel as we move throughout. You know, is this helpful for you? Are you liking this new format? Do you prefer kind of the traditional way that we've always done it? Share those comments in the chat panel with our team so we can make sure to make the most of our time together. But we want to dive in and share this education with you. So if this is your first time with us, it's a new format for us. So appreciate any hiccups we've had in the technology along the way as we're learning through this process as well. But thank you for being with us. We share this type of content about twice a month. So make sure you're looking for that in 2020. We're going to share some recaps of things we've been teaching in 2020, as well as share some new ideas as we move throughout our year. So stay tuned, watch your emails for invites to our webinar series. And we do have one more bootcamp in this series on December 17th about how to use Google Analytics to measure success. So you definitely won't want to miss that. It's so important to make sure that you're measuring the success of what you're doing from an analytics perspective. And we're going to touch briefly on that today, but we're going to do a deep dive on that December 17th. So thanks everybody for being with us. Let's jump into our 5 tips today. Number 1, start with a game plan. This is something that's so easy for people to miss. And as we talk to prospective customers about how we do marketing well, one of the first things we always talk about is starting with a game plan and what that means, what that looks like, and how we build our revenue and marketing strategies at Q4Launch. But this is so important because one of the things we know about a game plan is it drives consistency. And one of the things we know from talking to a lot of people about their marketing is they struggle with consistency. And I would say, you know, consistency is the secret to marketing success. I'm often asked, like at the end of a presentation, that's all great, all that information is great, but honestly, that's too much for me. So what's the one thing? Like, what's the one thing I need to do? And I think they're looking for this rocket science style answer about mind-blowing marketing strategy, the one thing they can do to transform their business. But my answer every time is consistency. The number one thing you can do in your business is consistency. For example, this webinar series or bootcamp series that we do it consistently. Is it hard? Absolutely. Is it hard some days to come up with new topics, new ideas, and sit down and write this content? Absolutely. But I know that it's helpful for you. We get tons of great feedback, and I know that it helps our business through our marketing channels as well. So I commit to the consistency of doing this by creating a schedule well in advance of the topics that we're going to teach. So our team can prepare for that. So I can think about the content before I'm actually delivering it, write something, put it together. But consistency is really important in this. And the game plan that we develop for our customers, for ourselves, is a key to being able to be successful in that. It also gives us more at-bats, right? So having a game plan creates a rhythm of being at-bat. And I talk about at-bats a lot when I'm talking to our prospective customers because of the scale we have as an agency. We have a tremendous number of at-bats. We have about 200 customers that trust us with their website marketing responsibilities, which means we have a tremendous amount of opportunities or at-bats every single month to try new things, test new things, see what the marketplace is responding to. And as a part of that, the results we tend to get are significantly higher than they would be otherwise. And the same will be true for you. If you send email once a quarter, it's not going to perform as well if you send it once a month or twice a month, because you're going to learn things from every time you step up to the plate. Every time you send an email campaign, if you do it with intention, you're going to learn something from that experience. And we're going to talk about how to pull those learnings out of those campaigns as well. But you're going to learn something from that, and those at-bats will drive greater success for you in the future. The other thing we want to do and what we will look at with a game plan is we want to make sure that we're avoiding analysis paralysis. Oftentimes we hear that people don't send email because it takes too long. And I think it takes too long, not because email is particularly difficult or software is difficult, although we know both those things can be true at times, but they get stuck in analysis paralysis. They want to send the perfect email, and perfect becomes the enemy of good. And we don't want to get stuck in that place. We don't want to over-bake it. To use an analogy, we're going to talk about diminishing returns here as well, but to use an analogy, we don't want to over-bake it. Cookies are great, muffins are great, but once you over-bake them, they're no longer great. They're still just as caloric. They still do just as much to your health, but they don't taste as good. And the same is true of an email. The same is true of a lot from a marketing and business perspective. Oftentimes you can over-bake it. You can spend too much time on it. And when you do that, you actually get to a place where it's not as good as it would have been otherwise. And there's two quotes here I want to share with you as we talk about analysis paralysis, and we'll talk about over-baking it. We've got this chart of diminishing returns on the screen, and if you've been with us before, you know we talk a lot about economic principles, but diminishing returns is a key economic principles. When we look at this graphic, what we see is the output up here on this axis, and the input on this axis. And what we find is in this beginning period, we have our most productive period of time. We move into this second period, and this is the area called diminishing returns, where we're investing a lot of resources to get a very small return on those resources. So there is some increase, but it's a very small increase in output versus the input that we required to get it. A very small result for the resource we invested to get it. And then after that diminishing return period, you actually go to a point of maximum yield, your maximum return, which is honestly, I think, unattainable, because you don't know where you cross over into negative returns, where you cross over into a period of over-baking it. And it's a negative return because every extra minute it spins in the oven, it actually gets that much worse. And that's the negative return part of what we're looking at. So we have diminishing returns, we have negative returns, and then we have our most productive period of time. And what we want to really do is understand where we tip from most productive with our point of diminishing returns into our period of diminishing returns and stay away from that. That is a trouble spot for you. Our team had the opportunity to go to the Global Leadership Summit and attend that. We took about half of our staff, made it available to everybody. We're able to take about half of our team to the Global Leadership Summit this year. Really transformative experience for much of our team. But one of the speakers that we had the opportunity to learn from was Craig Rochelle. He's recognized as one of the top leaders in America. I think one of the 50 most influential leaders in America. Definitely encourage you to check out his podcast if you haven't. It's something I've learned a lot from. But one of the talks that Craig gave at the Global Leadership Summit was introducing this principle of Gitmo. And you can imagine he made a lot of jokes about what you might Gitmo, which I'm going to spare you from today. I'm going to let you find that on your own. But the concept is good enough to move on. And Craig's a professional speaker. He's actually a pastor for a living, but speaks at conferences all over the world about leadership and everything else that goes into that. And he introduced this concept of Gitmo, which is essentially the same concept of diminishing returns as it related to him preparing talks that he gives at conferences. And he talked about the more time he invests, there's a period where he's in this most productive, and he's investing more time, and the talk is getting better, it's getting better, and then he goes into diminishing returns and eventually negative returns. And the same is true of all marketing you will do in your business, but it's especially true, it seems, with email marketing. So I would encourage you not to get caught in analysis paralysis. Don't move into that period of diminishing returns or worse yet, negative returns, but really focus on getting something good out the door and not letting perfect be the enemy of good. It's a really important concept. There's another concept, and you've probably heard me quote Jeff Bezos a lot if you've been on our webinars in the past or our boot camps in the past. But he had a message to his shareholders. I think it was in the 2017, 2018 shareholder letter that he wrote, something that I often read just because there's great business learning in that shareholder letter. So I'd encourage you to check that out if you haven't before. But he said that we make decisions at Amazon with 70% of the info that we wish we had. And it's a really important concept because I would say to kind of apply that to what we're talking about here, you need to send an email or you need to put your marketing out the door when it's 70% where you wish that it was. And we often see people get caught up with this from a website perspective. They want to launch their website with the perfect website. And I'm going to take this concept, I'm going to apply it to both. As I said, this applies to a lot in your businesses. And 70% might not be the right number for you, but that's not necessarily the point here that I want you to take away. And as it applies to the website, back to what I was talking about there, people want their website to be perfect. So they want to have the perfect photos, they want to have the perfect headline in this area, they want everything to be perfect before they launch it. But one of the things that we talk to our team about when we have a customer getting stuck in that analysis paralysis of I can't launch it till it's perfect, I have to wait on this, I have to wait on that, is we have your website in our development environment. It's a great website. Maybe it doesn't have the perfect photo and you need to bring the photographer back to get just that perfect photo. But your current website might be a 2 out of 10. Like if we rate websites on a scale of 0 to 10, maybe your current site's a 2, and the site we have in our development environment that we've put a lot of time and energy into is a 7 out of 10. And that next photo, that next thing you need, or whatever it is, that thing you need to make it perfect, to go from a 7 to an 8 or a 9 or a 10 is going to take however long, however much time, however much money, however many resources it's going to take to accomplish that. And one of the things we teach our team, or we're teaching our team as we see people get stuck into this, is to really introduce this concept of like, your current site's a 2, it's live right now, and people are coming to it every single day and making a decision. Am I going to do business with you or not? Am I going to book with you or not? They're making that decision. And every day we delay that launch and moving your website from the 2 that you have to the 7 that's ready to launch in our development environment, we're giving up that gap. We're giving up that productive time and giving up bookings as a result of that. So it might not be perfect. It will never be perfect. And a great website is constantly evolving, constantly getting better. But let's not get caught in this period of diminishing returns. Let's focus on, hey, we got something great. Let's go after that. Let's launch it here. And then let's iterate off of it to take it to an 8, to a 9, to a 10 over a period of time. But let's not get stuck chasing this perfection and moving into a period of diminishing or negative return. And that's true in so many things in your business that I encourage you to really take some time and process that and think about, where am I getting stuck? Where am I crossing that threshold into diminishing returns and possibly into negative returns? So a lot packed into that slide there, but some really important concepts that I think can be transformative for you, not only in your email marketing, not only in your marketing, but honestly in your business as a whole, if you'll really lean into those things. All right, let's keep moving along. Next thing we want to do with our game plan is connect it with current events. This seems really obvious, but it's oftentimes something we see people miss, or they think about it way too late, and they don't develop their game plan ahead of time. We develop our game plans at Q4Launch a quarter at a time. So right now, we're just starting the process of meeting with our customers about their first quarter game plan. So by the end of the year, our first quarter game plan will be pretty much set in stone. Of course, it will adjust as news happens and things in our businesses change, but we have a plan, and then we go about executing on that plan. And what that enables us to do is to make sure we have time to do things well inside of our marketing strategy, to use that most productive period of time on that chart that I showed you just a minute ago to create something great. And as part of that, connecting it with current events helps us plan for those things. So this Christmas email blast that we sent out for Glen Ella Springs was in our fourth quarter strategy. This wasn't something we came up with at the last minute and we're like, oh, surprise, Christmas is 3 weeks away. We should send an email blast out. No, this is something we prepared for. This is something we had in our strategy. We probably created it early November. We sent it out mid-November for me to be able to find the screenshot and put it in here for this content for you. So my point being, as people are planning trips, they're planning them ahead of time, they're starting to talk about them ahead of time, we need to prepare our marketing ahead of time as well. And your game plan will help you do that, and connecting it into current events in your marketplace, holidays, reasons to visit, lots of great things, messages you need to put out in your email marketing. All right, let's jump into tip number 2 and our 5 tips for revenue generating email marketing. And this one, we're going to just cover some best practices, right? So can't talk about email marketing. And if you're going to have revenue generating email marketing, you've got to tie into some of the best practices from an email perspective. So we want to touch on those briefly with you as well. We want to have our game plan. We want to know our best practices. That's step 2 in this process for you, or tip number 2. Part of that is making your offer clear and easy to understand and to the point. It kind of ties back to that same principle of diminishing returns. Let's not overcomplicate this. Make this clear and easy to understand. And as we talk about overcomplicating it, let's not overcomplicate it or burden our customer with tons of terms and conditions that maybe aren't really all that applicable. We know the more terms and conditions, the more policies you put around things, the more restrictive you make something, the lower the conversion is going to be. We've seen customers overbake special offers on many occasions by adding too many terms and conditions. And then it launches and the performance isn't there. Like, why did this perform? And we're like, because there's way too many terms and conditions. You've made your offer way too restrictive to the point that like no one can or wants to take advantage of it. So as you're thinking about offers that you're going to put into your email campaigns, don't make them over restrictive. Don't put too many things around it. Don't make it too difficult to achieve that. We also have to make sure we have a catchy subject line, right? I mean, that seems pretty obvious, but a catchy subject line, and emoticons are getting to be huge. The little icons and subject lines that are actually proven to work really, really well, just to catch people's attention, kind of that next layer of catching people's attention. So you're probably noticing a lot of those in your email inbox. We've done some testing with those, and you have to use them sparingly because you don't want to just kind of overdo it with that, like you don't want to overdo it with anything, but can really help drive performance of your subject lines to get your email opened in the first place. Because generating revenue starts with getting attention in the first place. Getting it opened and getting a click both have to happen before you generate revenue. We also want to begin and end with our most important links. So the layout of these emails is really important. And we see people send out emails. Many of you have actually added me to your email list, and I'm not encouraging everyone to do that today. That's not the point. But I've seen many of the people sending out emails, and just the design and layout doesn't follow best practices. So just as a simple thing as beginning and ending with your most important link. Make it obvious, make it easy for someone to find the link to do what it is that you want them to do. And then buttons everywhere. It sounds a little silly, but really that's kind of what it's at. Like, make sure it's really clickable. Like, your photo is clickable, some of your text is clickable, your actual buttons are clickable. People like buttons. It just shows them what to do, makes it easy for them to know what next step to take. So make sure that you've really linked about every possible thing in your email campaign to the desired result. So if you have a photo of a property like we're showing here with 3035 Marsh Haven, that whole picture really becomes a button, or has the opportunity to become a button. And the same is true of these below. With those particular ones, we've kind of combined the picture and the button together as one, but you can do that in lots of different ways from a design perspective. So make sure you're making that very clickable and using buttons to make it obvious for people where to click and what to do. All right, we're gonna dive into tip number 3 here for revenue generating email marketing. And that's to balance our sales content with our brand building content. One of the things I did not want to come from today's webinar, and that's an important thing to think about as you're preparing something, what takeaways do you not want people to have, is just to send offer, or send sales email all the time. So I wanted to make sure that to create revenue generating email, we understand we have to balance that with brand oriented email. We want to build our brand and put out offers. We want to balance those two things really, really well. And from the very beginning of us sending email marketing as our start at a digital agency, we really tried to balance those two things well. And we, at the beginning, told everybody they needed to send 2 emails a month. And I still think that that's ideal. The challenge is there's diminishing ROI depending on how big your email is. So that recommendation now is heavily tailored around how big your business is, how big your email list is. So we're a lot more strategic in some of those recommendations now, just because of the lack of ROI sometimes if you have a really small email database. But as we do that, and the reason we started with 2 goes back to this concept of we wanted to balance sales content with brand content. And we really wanted an email campaign that does both. Now more so, we're really weaving those concepts together and making one email campaign that can do both of those things well. But at the same time, we want some campaigns that are just standalone, very sales oriented. We're just coming off of Black Friday, Cyber Monday, one of the busiest shopping days of the year, if not the busiest shopping weekend of the year. It probably is. I don't know the stats exactly on that, but it probably is the busiest shopping weekend of the year. And as part of that, if you had a Black Friday or Cyber Monday deal, you probably didn't want a ton of brand-oriented content in that. These people were people that already knew your brand. You just wanted to get to the offer, make it clear, concise, and straight to the point. Or maybe not. Maybe you really had some brand content that supported the sale you were running, and you needed to include that content in there. But understanding this, unpacking this is going to be really helpful for you as you're preparing your 2020 strategy and really looking at what it takes to succeed. But don't sell all the time. Make sure that your email is building your brand and it's also selling something at some point to create the revenue generating part of it. I think oftentimes, and we're guilty of this as an agency, oftentimes we have erred too far on the brand side of things. We've been too hesitant to make a strong, clear offer and to sell something in our email campaigns. And that's something in 2019 we've spent a lot of time really refining and changing as we work to constantly get better. So make sure you're balancing these two things. Don't hear one or the other as the thing you need to do. You need to make sure you're balancing both of these things well to ultimately drive success. Too much of brand-oriented content will get really high open rates, really high clicks, but no revenue. And too many sales or promotions will get you revenue, but will also train your list to expect that's what we're sending out all the time. Your open rates, your click-through rates may actually go down over a period of time. So balancing those two things well is really important. And that last tip there, you need to repeat yourself often. And the reason that is people have very short memories, very short attention spans, and not everyone's going to open every email that you send. So we'll hear people say, oh, we can't send that message out. We just sent that a month ago or 3 months ago or 6 months ago. And that's not true because people may not have opened it, they may not have read it, or there's an even better chance if they did both those first two things, they've probably forgotten it because of how many other marketing messages they've been confronted with. So if the message is still applicable, you can probably send it again. Not necessarily the same email, but the same messaging in a different email, different campaign can really help because that repetition is really important, especially from a branding perspective. That's so important to really drive that repetition into who your brand is. What do you believe? What do you stand for? What do you represent? What are the type of guests you're trying to attract? Repeating that messaging again and again and again, and at times even repeating offers again and again and again. You get multiple emails from us to register for our webinar series because we know this concept is true. What we have found is that 3 email campaigns promoting a webinar or a boot camp that we're going to do is kind of the optimal amount. After that, there's some diminishing return like we talked about earlier, but that 3 email campaigns announcing that is really that right sequence or that right frequency to send that out. Now we have to then balance that and customize that based off of how many we're doing, when we're doing them, what the schedule looks like. There's a lot that goes into those decisions. But at a core, we're repeating ourselves 3 times because we know not every single time we catch your attention. You might miss our email because you had a busy day or you had 100 other emails that day you had to take care of. And you're saying, oh, I'm going to come back to that, but you forget. So we remind you again, 2, 3, a week later. That's all part of what we're trying to do here and using email to do this well. So it's true in our email, you're seeing it in the way we execute on our own email marketing strategy, and it should be true in yours as well. All right, tip number 4, use marketing automation to drive revenue. I mentioned at the top of the hour that we were going to talk about some different ways to do email marketing today. And so far we've talked about email campaigns kind of as a whole. We've talked about some tips, generally speaking, about how to do email well. We've talked about a game plan, but now we're going to talk about marketing automation. And one of the things I love about marketing automation is we build it once and it can create bookings forever. Now that doesn't mean set it and forget it, right? You need to make sure that the content's relevant, that it's timely, that it's updated. But generally speaking, when you build marketing automation campaigns, you can build them and they will continue to pay dividends for you. Unlike traditional email blasts, which you put a lot of time in, you put a lot of energy in, you put it together, you send it, and there's usually a 24 to 48 hour window that an email campaign lives. You will get traffic, you'll get clicks, and you'll get bookings from that for 24 to 48 hours after that. And then after that, people forget about it. It's in the past. We'll still see them pop up because people will remember them, they'll search for them, they'll find them that way in their inbox. But for the most part, it's got a 48-hour life period or life cycle of its own. Whereas marketing automation can live forever. We got to come back, we got to tweak it, but we can really hone that in on right message, right time to the right guest. And we've got these 7 stages of the guest life cycle on the screen for you here. So we're going to zoom in on that for you, load that up on the screen for you. But the 7 stages, and there's tons of different stages you can look at. We've talked about the 5 stages of travel before, but this is a little different. The 7 stages of the guest life cycle: dream, select, book, prepare, stay, share, return. And as you're thinking about marketing automation campaigns, and we're going to dive into some examples here in just a minute, but as you're thinking of marketing automation campaigns, you have an opportunity to really think about automation campaigns at each of these stages. So I'd encourage you to take those down, and as you're preparing your strategy for 2020, really lean into what those are, what those different stages are, and how might you speak to a guest most effectively in each of those stages. So let's take a quick look at some examples of great marketing automation campaigns. So I've broken this down into a few different stages, but the first here being pre-booking. So this is someone who's found your website, but they have not booked yet. So what type of automation campaigns might speak to these people? First of all, how do we even get these people's email addresses? That's another topic for another day. But pre-booking, what can we do to add value to these people? What can we do to nurture these people and increase the likelihood they'll book with you as opposed to somebody else? And there's a few ideas here: what to do, when to come, where to stay, special offers, just some things we can do. If we can get someone's email pre-booking, what can we do to get them closer to booking with us? How can we add value to them when they're in that dreaming and planning stage of their vacation process or their trip planning process? And then the next one, pre-stay. So they've booked with you, but they haven't arrived yet. So they're in this pre-stay. It's also called the anticipation stage. And if you study the anticipation stage, there's a lot of research that says this is the actual best part of taking a vacation. The people are more happy with their vacation, they're more excited about their vacation in the anticipation stage than they actually are in the experiencing stage. So that tells me as a marketer, we have a huge opportunity here. If people are happier, they're more excited, they feel overall better or more optimistic about the vacation they're going to take in this stage than the experiencing stage, we have an opportunity here. So pre-stay emails could look like things like an offer to extend your stay. I travel and stay in a lot of places, and I've only gotten one extend your stay email campaign. And I would have taken advantage of it, but just wasn't able to at that time. I wanted to take advantage of it. I wanted to extend that stay, but wasn't able to take advantage of it. And I'm sure a lot of people do take advantage of that. Stay add-ons or enhancements, things you can add to your stay, add to your experience. And if you have multiple profit centers inside of your business, things like a spa, a resort, lots of other profit centers you might be able to make revenue off of, there's a tremendous opportunity here. Or room upgrades. This isn't necessarily work for our vacation rental customers, although if you have a lot of condos, it might work. But the hoteliers joining us, the innkeepers joining us, this can be great for you. That room upgrade offer. And you might train your staff to do this at the front desk, but it can be really beneficial to send this in an email campaign ahead of time. It can take some time, but can drive results for you as well. And then on property. On property, we have a couple things we would look at. One is a pulse check, right? How's the stay going? A review request. There's research that says that if you ask for a review during the stay, you're actually more likely to get it, and you'll get a higher review typically than if you wait, and you have an opportunity to fix anything that might lead to a negative review. Extend your stay, also an opportunity on property, and then stay add-ons and enhancements, all opportunities on property. But thinking about what those things are ties into when you need to be sending those emails out. And to my point a few minutes ago, don't be afraid to repeat yourself. If you send an extend your stay as a pre-stay or pre-arrival email, it's absolutely okay to include it in an on-property or during your stay email as well. And then post-stay, this really important time when someone has exited the property, they've exited your destination, and you have an opportunity to nurture them on whether they come back and stay with you again. Rebooking offers, surveys, review requests, booking anniversary, birthdays, actual anniversary if you gather that information. Lots of information we can use to send post-stay marketing automation campaigns. All right, let's dive into tip number 5. We've unpacked marketing automation campaigns. Hopefully you've jump-started some ideas and you're leaning into that into 2020 to figure out, how do I need to do that? How can I implement that in my business? If you're asking yourself that question, we'd love to talk to you because we've got some great ideas we'd love to share with you. So if you're asking yourself, how do I implement this into my business when it comes to marketing automation campaigns, get in touch with us via the emails that we send you or via our website. We'd be happy to follow up with you. But let's dive into tip number 5. Tip number 5 is going to be a little bit controversial. And I say it's going to be controversial because I got Nick Saban on the screen, right? Anytime you put a picture of Nick Saban on the screen, you're bound to stir controversy. And I'm not an Alabama fan at all. But when you think about football coaches and when you think about people that have driven success over a period of time, now, since I put this content together, Alabama lost this a couple weekends ago. They've lost a couple times actually in the last couple weekends. So they're probably out of the football playoff. By the time you're seeing this, we'll know that for sure. But still, you can't argue with the fact that he's one of the most successful coaches in recent history, maybe of all time from a football perspective. And one of the reasons he's so successful is because he watches the tape. He, his staff, his players, they watch the tape. They analyze their past performance, painstakingly so. They say, okay, what worked, what didn't work, and who are we going to face from an opponent perspective, and watching the tape on them. Analogy breaks down there a little bit. Can't necessarily analyze your competition from a tape perspective, although you probably could. That's probably a topic for another day as well. But my point is that winners watch the tape. Winners understand what worked, what different. In the bottom left on the screen here, we have a chart of different email campaigns throughout the year. And we're going to take a closer look at that for a couple of reasons here. Because one thing I think we do is we move on too quickly, right? We move on too quickly and we say, okay, I just put all that work into that email. You probably overbaked it a little bit and you're just ready to move on. And you got other things in your business screaming for your attention, other fires you got to put out or whatever. And then your game plan says, oh my gosh, it's time to send an email campaign again. And you rush and you put something together and you get it out the door, and good for you. You followed your game plan. But shame on you, you didn't watch the tape. You have no idea really how well your last email campaign worked and what learnings exist inside of that email campaign. So I talked about this screenshot that we have here, and there's two things I want to call your attention to. There's two specific email campaigns that really stand out in this screenshot. One is this first email in mid-January that we see here. This was our highest performing email of the year in 2019, and we need to unpack and understand why. And then we have another one here, late July, early August in 2019. This is our second highest performing email campaign. And in the same way, we need to understand why. What was so great about that? It could just be it was during peak season, so it makes a lot of sense, and seasonality is the reason for that. Or it might not be, but we don't know. We don't want to just write it off and say, oh, well, that makes sense. It's in the middle of our peak season, so that's why it was the highest performing email campaign. We don't want to just make excuses without watching the tape. So go back, look at those email campaigns, look at your top performing email campaigns, and ask yourself why. Understand why. And this is something we're doing on a regular basis at Q4Launch, and trying to take those learnings and apply them into every interaction that we have, every opportunity, every at-bat that we have. And not just apply them for that customer, but apply that learning across our organization. So I talked early on in our game plan, tip number 1, about how many at-bats we get, how much opportunity we have to learn. And as we learn from that, we have an opportunity to do those things better. We have an opportunity to apply that learning to everything we do as an agency. So the capacity for learning amongst our team of 50 people here representing 200 customers is a huge capacity to learn. So think through that in your own business. What do you need to watch the tape on? What do you need to go back and analyze and say what worked, what didn't, and what do we need to do differently? And in the same way we want to analyze our wins, our performances, I guarantee you Nick Saban is poring over that tape from his recent losses and saying, why did we lose that game? What went wrong in that game? So we want to look at some of those lower performing campaigns as well. We want to understand, why was this a lower performing campaign? And what made it a lower performing campaign. And as we do that, we want to make sure we're looking at different metrics. Revenue being a key metric there, but we also want to be looking at open rates, click-through rates, looking at some of those metrics, because oftentimes what you'll see is when you send high brand-oriented content, you'll see really high click-through rates, because what we're measuring here is users. So this is actually essentially clicks to our site. So we want to overlay that with revenue and understand just driving a ton of users drives a lot of brand awareness, which in and of itself is accomplishing a goal. It's a very important marketing goal, but it doesn't always drive revenue. So you want to balance those two things and look at them differently, because a campaign that draws users really well may not be the same campaign that drives the most revenue for you. So you've got to look at both of those things and take learnings away from both of those things. And I would encourage you, this can get a little hard sometimes to do by yourself, but gather your team around you. Something we've done is taken some of our most successful email campaigns and old school style, printed them out and put them up in the office. And just, sent a prompt out on Slack or whatever and said, all right, there's an email campaign posted here. Go up and make a note on it, like literally write on it why was this campaign so successful? You personally analyze it, and then let's come together as a group and discuss it. And you can do that within your own teams. Your team may be small, your team may be large, but you can do that with your own teams to really look at that. You might not necessarily have to print it out and leave it in time and space for a lot of people to comment on like we do. You might just put it up during one of your staff meetings on the screen and congratulate whoever was responsible for sending it out and unpack why. Or talk about why didn't it work. If maybe you're analyzing something that you didn't win on, a loss that you had. Why didn't it work? Let's analyze that as well. And have those opportunities for team learning. I think that's one of the other unique things, and one of the reasons we think it's really important to have a physical office that our team goes to every day. We invest a lot of money into creating an environment where our team comes to work every day. And we're excited next week to start the process of moving into a new office, which we'll introduce you guys to at some point, I'm sure. But that's really important to us. Most of our competitors are virtual offices, and that works for them. But we think there's a lot of learning that comes from sharing time and space. And I'm a little bit old school in that sense. That being together in a physical place helps us learn more together and helps serve our customers better. So as such, we invest a lot into that space. But sharing that space, sharing that time to collide, to collaborate is a really important thing to make your email work better for you in 2020. All right, so we've talked about that. We talked about watching the tape, unpacking that. Hopefully that visual of your favorite football coach will stick with you. You might hate Nick Saban, but hopefully that visual of your football coach will stick with you. Even if you hate him, you can't argue with the fact that he's a great football coach. All right, so we've unpacked our 5 tips for revenue generating email marketing today. Hopefully you're ready to take some next steps. If you are, we'd love to talk to you. Feel free to contact us for help today. My contact information is there on the screen. You can go to our website as well and contact us. Please get in touch with us if there's anything we can do. As you're preparing for 2020, now is the time to make 2020 the best it can be. Don't wait until it's too late. Don't wait until the first quarter of the year when things start getting busy in other ways, and before you know it, you're just doing the same things you've done year and year again, and you're not going to see the same results from those things in 2020 that you have in the past. So make sure you're taking a step forward. Make sure that you're willing to do something different to achieve a result you've never achieved before in 2020. That's what progress is all about. That's what great businesses do. Great businesses don't have to grow all the time, but they do have to get better all the time. And that's what we want you to do. And that's what we want to be a part of helping you do, is to get better all the time. Make your marketing better all the time. Contact us today if that's something we can help you with. Quick plug for our last webinar here as well. How to use Google Analytics to measure success. We're going to be teaching this next week, December 17th at 2 p.m. Eastern time. Diving into this topic, it's going to get a little bit geeky, but we're going to have a lot of fun at the same time and make it really easy to understand the key spots you need to be going into Google Analytics to really unpack this information for yourself. So a really important thing for you to tune into. We've taught you how to do marketing well over the last 5 boot camps that we've had together. Now we need to make sure that we have a plan for how are we going to analyze our performance, that we have a plan for that we know what we're going to do, and we can stick to that in 2020. Because if we're not taking the time to analyze that performance, like I just spent the last 5 minutes teaching you about watching the tape, then we're going to make mistakes in 2020. And we're going to miss opportunities we would have otherwise capitalized on. So go to our website, look for our bootcamp series if you're not registered already. Share this with a friend if it's been helpful for you and you are already registered. And we'll see you on December 17th for how to use Google Analytics to measure success. Thanks, everybody. We hope you have a great day. If you have questions, feel free to drop them in the chat panel. We'll get your questions answered for you. Otherwise, we will see you on December 17th at 2 p.m. for how to use Google Analytics to measure success.